Hey everybody, welcome to the Mana Leek. I'm John as always, and it's time for another set review. That's right, another set has snuck up on us. I was not really ready for this one with everything going on in the world and my just checking out of Magic with Theros. This one just kind of popped up. Now this is going to be very, very weird. We're going to be reviewing a set that is coming out online next weekend, but we won't be able to touch this in paper for at least a month, and of course we'll have to see in our various countries, provinces, cities, etc. if that even happens. I will certainly be playing this online. In fact, you can go over to twitch.tv/themanaleak next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and I will be playing it a day before most of you can play it. So make sure you go check that out. We will jam sealed all day over there, maybe even try arena draft. We'll see. We know the problems that exist there. But thank you very much to Watsy for that invite and the stocked account. Now we're going to jump into this set review with a couple quick reminders that this is a draft-focused set review. Sealed will be very applicable to this, but absolutely super not talking about constructed in this set review. Now, in addition, I have not played with the vast majority of these cards. If they're reprints, maybe I have, but the vast majority, this is the first time that I'll be playing with them. And so my ratings might change. I might not be 100% accurate on these ratings, but these are how I'm going to approach them next week. This is how I'm going to go into this format, believing that these cards are. Of course, these opinions, these ratings, etc. might change. As well, remember that this is my opinion. This is how I rate these cards. You may rate cards differently. Either you have a preference for a specific type of card that I just don't have a preference for. You're okay with randomness. I hate randomness. My opinion, and as a result, the best thing that you can do is make sure that you discuss this in the comments down below, over on the Discord if you're a patron or a Twitch subscriber. Talk about this. This is a starting point for these cards, not the ending point. And you really shouldn't take any one specific review as the end point, especially before any of us have actually touched these cards. Now, just another quick overview before I get into the set review. This is the set review that I am the absolute least confident about ever. This set is insanely complex, and I don't know if that means it's going to be good or awful. It could go either way. It could be that this is just so complex that it's one of the most interesting puzzles we've ever seen to figure out, or it could be that it's so complex that it is just not fun to keep track of everything, and I have no idea how that's going to end up. The set is clearly designed for digital. There is a bunch of stuff in this set that we'll talk about throughout the next week worth of videos that are going to be a nightmare to track in paper. There's going to be confusion. There's going to be misunderstandings. It's going to be a miserable slog in paper. Luckily, we're not playing this in paper for at least a month, if not longer. Or who knows, ever. By my count, the Core Set 2021 pre-release is 9-10 weeks away. But enough of that. Let's get started on the white set review. Up first is Blade Banish. Blade Banish is 3 and a white for an instant at common. Exile target creature with power 4 or greater. So a quick check shows that there are 22 cards below rare that have a power of 4 or greater. Including rares, we get up to 38. Out of how many, you ask? Well, out of 137 creatures, says Scryfall. That seems like a large number of creatures. But I did a quick check, and apparently that's actually pretty normal. Eldraine actually had more creatures than 137. So that is 22 out of 137 creatures. That's not that many. I don't know if you want to load up on Blade Banishes exactly. Now, there are plenty of ways for creatures to grow, be it temporarily through combat tricks, statically through anthem effects, or various ways of getting counters on, such as through some of the mutate cards or some of the other instants or sorceries. So I don't know about going deep on this card. I think I probably only want one to start in the main deck, and even then, we'll have to take a look at if that should actually be in the main deck or not. This is Ikoria, Lair of Behemoths, but that quick Scryfall search actually reveals that the creatures aren't necessarily that gigantic. Still, I think you're fine with one in your main deck to start with, but don't go deep on this. Don't think that there are just giant things running around non-stop. Up next is Checkpoint Officer. Checkpoint Officer is 1 and a white for a creature human soldier at common. He's a 1/2. Pay 1 and a white and tap him. Tap target creature. So I like tappers, they're very, very, very strong, but back in the day they used to cost nothing to tap, and then for a while they cost 1 mana to tap. Now we have seen variations of this lately. 2 mana is relatively expensive for a tapper. That's a lot of mana that you have to keep back, but it'll still do the work if you absolutely need it to, especially if people are, Voltroning up one creature, just putting a whole bunch of mutate on one creature to get this weird amalgam of rules text. It's not as high a pick as the 1 mana tappers that we've seen in the past, or especially the 0 mana tappers that we've seen, but I'd still be happy with one of these in a whole lot of my white deck. So it's like a strong C+, like a C++. Up next is Coordinated Charge. Coordinated Charge is 4 and a white for an instant at common. Creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn. Cycling for 2 generic mana. That's right, Cycling is back. Cycling, if you're not familiar with it, is an instant speed effect. You can do it at any time. You pay the cycling cost, you discard the card, and you draw a card. It makes cards much better. It also makes formats much more consistent. You can play cards that are situationally impactful, but if that situation does not come up, you can just throw them away and turn them into another random card. Hopefully something better. It might just be a land, but who knows? But it's a nice little upside. So this is very expensive. 5 mana for +2/+1. We've seen this effect at 4 mana, sometimes even lower. Something like a Trumpet Blast, which is +2/+0, usually costs only 3 mana. So 5 mana is an awful lot, but it's going to do the exact same thing. If you are going wide, this is going to be a card that you want to have a copy of. Those cards usually have a downside where if you didn't happen to successfully go wide, it's kind of a dead card in your hand, or you're going to have to use it as a really mediocre combat trick. This one, if things are just not going your way, pay 2 mana, throw it away, draw a card, try to get back into that game. Fine enough card. I think if you are going wide, you're going to want one of these. I don't know about the second one. Maybe Cycling just makes it good enough to play the second one. But if you are not a go wide deck, you probably just don't really play this card. So it's kind of like a deck dependent C+, but in many decks it's more like a D. Up next is Cub Warden. Cub Warden is 3 and a white for a creature cat at rare. It's a 3/5 with lifelink, and whenever this creature mutates, create 2 1/1 white cat creature tokens with lifelink. The mutate cost is 2 white. This video is going to be longer because I'm going to have to talk about mutate right now. I almost debated doing an entire video on this mechanic. It is insane. There are a billion rules implications. It is not intuitive. I hate the design of this mechanic. We'll see if it plays out well or not, but I hate the design of this mechanic. But let's give a brief overview. There are a large number of creatures in this set that have the keyword mutate. Mutate is an alternative casting cost that you can pay instead of paying the top right corner casting cost. Sometimes it's cheaper, sometimes it's more expensive. In this case, it's the same, although slightly different. And if you do cast it, you do so targeting a creature on your board. Assuming the mutate creature resolves, you put that mutate creature on top of or underneath the creature that you targeted. This results in a stack of creatures that make up one singular creature. What the creature is determined by the top card. That determines the name, the casting cost, the type, the power and toughness, the rarity, I guess, if that matters, or perhaps the artist if you're playing Unhinged. The cards underneath it sort of disappear except for their rules text. The creature, the one creature that stack represents, has all of the rules text of all of the creatures. But remember, the power and toughness is just the power and toughness of the top creature. Now, there are a ludicrous number of weird rules interactions. Many of them, some of them don't matter for limited, such as what happens if a creature has persist on it. But we'll go over some of these big rule things right here. First off, if the creature ever changes zones, it splits up. So if I bounce or kill or exile that creature, which is a stack of cards, the entire stack goes to the graveyard, the exile zone, the hand, and stops being a stack. It splits back up into all the individual creatures. So if I bounce a stack of 5 creatures to your hand, the entire stack goes back to your hand. This is important for exile because if you do flicker a creature, it goes to the exile zone as one stack, splits up in the exile zone because it changed zones, and then would return as individual creatures. You would not get the stack back. A couple of other weird little rule interactions here. If the creature that you are targeting with your mutate spell disappears, dies, bounces, flickers, whatever, you don't lose the mutate creature. It just enters the battlefield as the normal version of the creature as opposed to actually mutating. So it's kind of like bestow in that situation. As well, I saw this confusion a little bit on some videos I posted. Cub Warden, for example, says whenever this creature mutates, that means casting it for its mutate cost or mutating something on top of it. So if we cast another Cub Warden on top of this Cub Warden, that would count as mutate as well. So mutate is either casting for mutate cost or the act of putting something on something else. It's exceptionally confusing. This is one of the best examples of Wizards designing purely for digital, because in paper, this is going to be a nightmare to explain. It's going to be a nightmare to keep track of everything. But on Arena, on MTGO, it's just going to work. It's just going to do whatever it's supposed to do. Cross our fingers, we hope. Anyways, Cub Warden. Obviously on its own, unmutated, the card's kind of mediocre at best. A 4-mana 3/5 with lifelink just isn't really that impactful. It's fine, but it's not a card that I'm going to go out of my way to play. It'll block well, it'll gain me some life, sure, it's fine. It's like a C+ perhaps, because 4 mana is not too bad. But if we mutate this out, we get 2 1/1s attached to it, or not attached to it, but with it, and they both have lifelink as well. So we actually get 5/5 for power if we're mutating this on top of something, or mutating something underneath of this if it already exists. That's a very, very, very good card, and assuming that you are going to be mutating at least a few times, this is going to be much more like a B, I would say. And this is where the grades are going to be very tricky in this set, because mutate wildly changes the power of the cards. If you never mutate onto this card, it just doesn't seem that good. If you never mutated onto something, it just doesn't seem that good. But should you mutate onto this or mutate it onto something, it jumps right on into the solid B range. So the grades here are going to be super wonky. They're going to be super variable based on your situation. And unfortunately, there's just nothing I can do about that. This is a fantastic example of why grading systems suck for Magic. So remember, the discussions of the cards are important. The grades do not matter, more so for this set than any other set. As well, it also makes it very confusing to rate non-mutate creatures, because every single non-mutate creature needs to be looked at through the lens of, well, you could mutate onto it. So, like I said at the start, this set review terrifies me, this set terrifies me, because there is so much going on. Cub Warden, a B. Let's finally move on to the next card. Up next is DeSquad Marshal. DeSquad Marshal is 3 and a white for a creature human soldier at common. It's a 3/3. When DeSquad Marshal enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white human creature soldier token. It's a 3/3 for 4, except it gets a 1/1, so it's a 4/4 for 4, but a less than good 4/4 for 4. I am never really that big of a fan of getting an extra 1/1 that I have had to pay full cost for. If I want to go wide, it helps out, but one extra 1/1 doesn't really help out all that much. So I think this card's kind of a little bit middling. There is a human sub-theme that we'll see probably in this video and in future videos, so that could help out. Obviously, there is coordinated charge, there is go wide in this format. So if you really need this card and you really need that token, I think you'll know, but otherwise this is pretty darn cuttable. So I've got it at like a C, maybe C-. Up next is Divine Arrow. Divine Arrow is 1 and a white for an instant at common. Divine Arrow deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. This, of course, is Gideon's Reproach, if you wanted to get a card that probably won't be reprinted due to story reasons. But yeah, Divine Arrow is fine. 107 creatures in the set have power 4 or less, so this will kill 107 creatures in the format out of, what did I say, 134? So it's going to do the job a whole lot of the time. I think you'd be pretty happy to have multiples of these in every white deck. I might not go insane and have like 5, but maybe I would. It's just very good, very cheap, and it's going to kill a whole lot of things. So this is like a B-. Up next is Drannith Healer. Drannith Healer is 1 and a white for a creature human cleric at common. It's a 2/2. Whenever you cycle another card, you gain 1 life, cycling 1 generic mana. So here we have our first cycling payoff, and you'll see a fair number of these. It appears that white-red is kind of the primary cycling matters colors, and so this one obviously gives you bonuses for cycling your cards. Now, as we'll see, there are much better cycling payoffs than gaining a single life. In fact, I might put this as the weakest payoff for the Cycling Matters deck. So I am not really interested in getting a Drannith Healer into the vast majority of my decks. It's a vanilla bear a whole lot of the time, which just unfortunately is not that playable anymore. There was a day where a 2/2 for 2 was totally fine and solid, and now a 2/2 for 2 is a little bit underpowered, and especially in this set it would look like. So this seems like a C- to me, even in the right deck, the cycling deck. I think it's still a very, very, very cuttable C-. Up next is Drannith Magistrate. Drannith Magistrate is 1 and a white for a creature human wizard at rare. He's a 1/3. Your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. This seems like an obvious plant for Constructed because there's just not that much casting of cards from places other than your hand. As we'll see much later next week, there are cards that are cast out of the sideboard. They're all rare, and this is a rare, and so the odds of all of this coming together for you to successfully mesh your opponent up with their companion plan seems pretty darn low. So this should probably sit in your sideboard a whole lot of the time. It's like a D+. If you desperately need a creature or a human or something, here you go, but don't expect to really get that much value off of this. Up next is Fight as One. Fight as One is 1 single white mana for an instant at uncommon. Choose one or both. Target human creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains indestructible until end of turn. Target non-human creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains indestructible until end of turn. So if you have a human and a non-human for 1 single mana, you can give both of them indestructible and +1/+1. That's not my favorite combat trick. Obviously, if you get full value out of it and win 2 combats with it, it's huge, but there's just so many times where this is just going to be +1/+1 and indestructible to one thing. It might not even be the thing that you want it to be. It just feels like there's a lot of cases where this is going to be very, very, very unimpactful and not do the full value. Seems like a bit of a junky combat trick to me. I think you'll probably be okay playing like one of them if you just have to as a 23rd card, but I think it's pretty cuttable as a C-. Up next is Flourishing Fox. Flourishing Fox is a single white mana for a creature fox at uncommon. It's a 1/1. Whenever you cycle another card, put a +1/+1 counter on Flourishing Fox, cycling for 1 generic mana. Now this is a much better cycling payoff. It's still not insane. We're not, killing creatures off. We're not doing a whole bunch of crazy stuff with this, but we are turning a 1/1 for 1 into a 2/2 the first time we cycle. Then a 3/3, 4/4, etc. from there. This having cycling itself also means that it's great because if you draw this, turn 9, when you're top decking, there's not much else going on. A 1/1 is going to be mediocre. You're not going to have enough time in that game to grow this to giant levels. You can just pay 1 mana, throw it away, and get something else. And you may have other stuff that triggers because of that cycle on the battlefield that late into the game. So this seems like a totally fine card for that cycling deck. If you are not cycling a lot, if you have, I would say, less than like 4 or 5 cycling cards in your deck, this is probably extraordinarily cuttable. At like a D+, you probably just shouldn't play it. But if you are cycling, I think this can range as high as a B-. Up next is Garrison Cat. Garrison Cat's a single white mana for a creature cat at common. It's a 1/1. When Garrison Cat dies, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Not a big fan of this from a vanilla perspective. A 1/1 for 1 I'm not interested in ever, and a 1/1 for 1 that turns into a 1/1 for 1 is not something that I care about either. Remember Hunted Witness? It just wasn't that good. Now, as I mentioned, you have to think about every single creature as a platform for mutate. You play this on turn 1, and then all of your mutate creatures that cost less to mutate technically have haste. So there is an argument that you actually should be playing cruddy 1/1s for 1. Just because they're going to make your mutate creatures even better. I don't know how that's actually going to work out, and I'm still going to be a proponent of don't play bad cards to make other cards better. There are better 1/1s for 1 than this card. You're never going to have this card on top because you're not going to want a 1/1, and having this card's rule text of getting a 1/1 when your mutated creature dies just isn't that good either. I think this is a D+ even with mutate included, so I'm gonna cut this card almost always. Up next is Helico Glider. Helico Glider is 2 and a white for creature Nightmare Squirrel. At common, it's a 2/2. Helico Glider enters the battlefield with your choice of a flying counter or a first strike counter on it. This is another mechanic in Ikoria. Every single French vanilla mechanic that you can think of, vigilance, haste, flying, lifelink, hexproof, etc., has a counter, and there are cards that put those counters onto creatures, granting them that ability. So this just seems very solid. It's a 2/2 flyer, I would say 99% of the time for 3 mana, which is totally okay. That's a Windrake and not even in blue. Then the rare time that it makes sense to give it first strike, perhaps you have future mutate plans maybe, but still flying would seem better in almost every case, is a cool bonus. An easy C+, you'll play every single copy that you have. I actually think this could potentially creep into the top 3 white commons, maybe as the 3rd white common, but it's definitely going to be in the top 5. Just seems like a very, very, very solid creature, and it's going to be a great mutate platform as well. Up next is Huntmaster Liger. Huntmaster Liger is 3 and a white for a creature cat at uncommon. It's a 3/4. Whenever this creature mutates, other creatures you control get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of times this creature has mutated. Mutate cost of 2 and a white, so here's a cheaper mutate. Now, I didn't mention this back during the big mutate talk, but there is a quick and easy way to keep track of this, because there are going to be a number of creatures that care about the number of times the creature has mutated. This means how many times has the resulting stack mutated, and that is always going to be the number of cards in that stack minus 1. So if I mutate this onto a stack of 3 cards, that stack is going to have 4 cards, 4 minus 1. It is mutated 3 times, therefore all my creatures are going to get +3/+3. A lot of the uncommon mutate creatures that count number of times that something is mutated seem insane. If you've mutated something, say like 2 times, and you play this for 3 mana, you have yourself essentially a hasty 3/4, assuming there's nothing bigger in that stack that you want instead, and your entire board gets +3/+3 out of nowhere. It's not Craterhoof Behemoth, but we're definitely getting into oops, the game ended territory, and we'll see a whole lot of oops, the game ended cards in this set. But this is where Mutate has such wild variance. If I don't have a stack of creatures, if I haven't gone wide, and in fact Huntmaster Liger plays against itself heavily where you want to have a stack, but you also want to be wide, and I think that's actually a bit of a big problem here. All of this makes Huntmaster Liger really, really hard to actually rate. I have a feeling it will be overrated across the board. I think people are going to think about those times where you do mutate it 3 times or 4 times, but you also happen to have a board of 7 creatures, somehow having the best of both worlds. And I don't think that's going to happen all of the time. When it does, it's going to be insane, and when it doesn't, it's going to be much, 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 much less insane. My brief overview of the set is that actually seems to be another hidden mechanic of the set, is extreme variance in quality of cards. So we'll see how Huntmaster Liger goes. I'm going to start it at like a B-. I think it's fine. I think you do need to build a little bit optimistically and plan that it's just going to work out, but I think it might be tricky to work out. So let's start at a B- for Huntmaster Liger, but I really have no clue. Up next is Imposing Vantasaur. Imposing Vantasaur is 5 and a white for a creature dinosaur at common. It's a 3/6 with vigilance and cycling for 1 generic mana. Seems aggressively mediocre. It's incredibly expensive for a 3/6 vigilance. I do not want to be paying 6 mana for this. The fact that I can cycle it for 1 mana is very nice. If I'm in the cycling deck, this is a cheap way to trigger all of my when you cycle a card effects. If I do happen to get to 6 mana and I've got nothing better to do, I can cast it anyways. Why not? That, of course, is a big bonus of cycling, and so this card probably sits at the C. If it didn't have cycling, this would drop way down into the D+, never want to play it, but with cycling I think you can play it if you want to. I'm still going to try to play better cards though. C for Imposing Vantasaur. Up next is Keensight Mentor. Keensight Mentor is 2 and a white for a creature human cleric at uncommon. It's a 1/4. When Keensight Mentor enters the battlefield, put a vigilance counter on target non-human creature you control. Pay 1 and a white and tap it. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control with vigilance. So this is a cycle. We'll see a mentor in every color that gives and cares about a mechanic counter of some kind. Now, vigilance is interesting. There are only 8 creatures in the entire set below rare that can actually have or get vigilance. Some naturally have it, some can enter with a counter of that if they want it to. And of course, Keensight Mentor can give vigilance to another creature, although she herself doesn't actually have it. So I really don't know about these mentors. I think they're going to be overrated. I don't think that you're just going to casually have all of your creatures having vigilance. I don't know if you're going to be getting many more than 1/+1/+1 counter each time you activate this. The fact that you have to tap it is kind of a pain. You would want her to have vigilance so that she could attack and then activate. Which actually sounds not bad just in a vacuum by herself. She's a 3 mana 1/4 vigilance. that can probably attack pretty decently. End of your opponent's turn for 2 mana. She becomes a 2/5, then a 3/6. Actually, yeah, you know what? In a total vacuum, I think she's totally fine. That changes my entire outlook on this. I was definitely really thinking of Outlast, which is a very similar mechanic, except it was sorcery speed. This is instant speed. So actually, I do think this Mentor is totally fine on her own. And if you get more value out of it, awesome. I don't know if I'm going to try to build the Vigilance deck, though. And as a tip, looking at the cards, Vigilance appears to be the green-white mechanic. So to take most advantage of her, you're going to want to be in green as well as white. So I've got her at like a, let's go with a B. I think she might actually just be a straight up B. Maybe a B-. She takes some time to get going. Up next is Lava Brink Venturer. Lava Brink Venturer is 2 and a white for a creature human soldier at rare. It's a 3/3. As Lava Brink Venturer enters the battlefield, choose odd or even. There's reminder text that 0 is even, and this is a tiny theme in the set. There is stuff that cares about even and odd. Lava Brink Venturer has protection from each converted mana cost of the chosen value. So protection is back, and Haktos style odd or even or casting cost based protection is back, and I hate it. I hate it a lot. This is going to be one of those high variance cards again, where your opponent plays it and you have nothing but even, they choose even, and you're just going to die very quickly if you don't find an answer immediately. Or you're going to have an even mix of even and odd cards, and your opponent has to pick one, and things are going to be fine, and this is going to be kind of like a vanilla 3/3. I really hate high variance cards like this, and this set does seem to be chock full of them. Lava Brink Venture is probably just extremely good as like a solid B, I think. I don't think we'd go higher than a B. It is still just a 3/3, and there are going to be all those situations where you're just going to be stonewalled by opponent who is not too odd or too even. Keep in mind it's protection, which means it's protection from your stuff as well. No mutating onto this, no casting combat tricks onto this if they are odd or even, and that is what you've chosen. Keep that in mind, but let's go with a B for Lava Brink Venturer. Up next is Light of Hope. Light of Hope is a single white mana for an instant at common. Choose one. You gain 4 life, so just get absolutely screwed healing salve. Destroy target enchantment, or put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Putting 3 modes on this card probably makes it fine as like a 23rd card. It might still be a 24th card. I'm not going to be going out of my way to play this. I'm not going to be looking through my sealed pool and going, whew, at least I got a Light of Hope. Not killing artifacts is big. I really want my my Naturalize as my disenchants to kill artifact or enchantment. There are a lot of enchantments in this set, but as we'll see, I'm personally not a big fan of a lot of them. Gaining 4 life is going to very rarely be applicable, and getting a single +1/+1 counter on a creature is just not worth a card to me. So this is, I think, 24th cardy. I think I'm going to keep it at a D+. I'm going to try to not play it, but if I'm scrounging for playables, I think you can put it in and not feel horrible about your choice. Up next is Luminous Broodmoth. Luminous Broodmoth is 2 white for a creature insect at Mythic. It's a 3/4 flyer. Whenever a creature you control without flying dies, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a flying counter on it. This is just insane. It's a 3/4 flyer for 4, which is already overstated, and the fact that all of your other non-flyers can't die the first time is stupid. Absolutely stupid. This is a bomb, a definition of a bomb. Super, super good. A+. It's a first pick in literally every pack that you'll ever see it in. A+ for Luminous Broodmoth. Imagine having a stack of 3 or 4 creatures that don't have flying that have mutated, and your opponent kills that one creature, and now you get 4 flyers back. Ugh. Up next is Majestic Orhorn. Majestic Orhorn is 4 and a white for a creature unicorn at uncommon. I believe it's an Orhorn, not a unicorn. It's a 4/4 vigilance. Whenever this creature mutates, you gain 4 life. Mutate for 3 and a white. This uncommon mutator doesn't seem quite as good as some of the other uncommon ones. 4/4 vigilance for 5, I really don't want to play. 4/4 vigilance for 4, and I gain 4 life. Well, that's just totally okay. And then potentially in the future, I can get 4 life again. Seems fine. It's like a C+, I think, assuming that you're going to mutate it even once. But I don't think it's any higher than that C+. Even if you're mutating tons of times, I don't think it's any more than a C+. So C+ for Majestic Orhorn. Up next is Main Servile. Main Servile is 1 and a white for a creature cat at common. It's a 1/4 with vigilance. This seems pretty obviously meant to be a mutate platform. If you have a mutate creature that you want to have a bigger butt, you could have it be a 1/4 vigilance, and whatever rules text it happens to have, it will let you give vigilance to things. It's going to block decently well for a bit. But I still don't think this is one of the better mutate platforms. I think you could just play better cards. So I'm going to keep this at a C-. I'm just not going to want to play it. There's better cards. Play better cards. Up next is Mythos of Snap Dex. Mythos of Snap Dex is 2 white for a sorcery at rare. Each player chooses an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker from among the non-land permanents they control, then sacrifices the rest. If black-red was spent to cast this spell, you choose the permanents for each player instead. This is a cycle. We'll see one for each color. They are monocolored, except if you do pay the other 2 colors of that wedge, then you get a better effect. So if you pay black, red, white, you get a fantastic Sword of Wrath. If you don't, you get single combat, essentially, which was a horribly unplayable card in War of the Spark, and this card will be horribly unplayable here if you are not paying red, black, white. So if you're not going to play red, black, white, if you're not splashing for it or playing 3 colors, you should not play this card. It is garbage. Your opponent's going to choose their best creatures. You're going to choose your best creature, and you better hope that yours is better and you don't have control over that. There's going to be a ton of times where your creature's not as good as their best one, and this card's just gonna suck. But if you are playing 3 colors, if you are splashing for that black-red, if you are confident that you are going to cast this for black, red, white, then this card is actually just very, very decent. So keep that in mind. It's kind of up to you. This ranges from like a B+ to an F, I would say, maybe a D-. Up next is Pacifism, one of my favorite cards ever. Pacifism is 1 and a white for an enchantment aura at common. Enchanted creature can't attack or block. Pacifism is always great, even when people think they're really, really clever and say it's actually not good because of exploit, or because of this, or because of mutate. It's still great. It's still very, very, very good. This will deal with so many threats that you can't otherwise deal with. This will stop that trampler from being able to trample over you. This will stop that flyer from flying over you. This will stop that scary creature. This will do what you need it to do. It's premium removal. It's going to be probably the best white uncommon in the entire set, and it's going to be a high pick in most of the packs that it's in. I've got Pacifism at a solid B+. Up next is Petechia Tiger. Petechia Tiger is 4 and a white for a creature cat at common. It's a 3/4 flyer. When Petechia Tiger enters the battlefield, target human you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. This is pretty playable. Prized Feldigriff and Shining Aerosaur have proven how viable a 5-mana 3/4 flyer is by itself. If you do get that +2/+2 bonus out of it, cool bonus, you know. I don't know if I'm really super relying on that bonus, but if you're playing white, there's a decent chance that you'll have some number of humans. It is one of the more human-y colors. But notably, humans are often a little small, so it's not like you're getting a 5/5 or a 6/6 or a 7/7 out of that +2/+2, but not bad. As well, it's a decently statted flyer, which means that it's an okay mutate platform, although we are looking late in the game for you to have this down and then later mutate on top of it. I think it's a C+. I think you'll be very happy with the first one. I don't know that I'll load up on them, though. Up next is Perimeter Sergeant. Perimeter Sergeant is 2 and a white for a creature human soldier at common. It's a 3/2. Whenever Perimeter Sergeant attacks, other humans you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. 3/2 for 3 is almost always okay. It's very filler, but okay. The fact that when it attacks, your other humans attack well means that this is probably going to go very well into a go wide deck. I'm actually not 100% certain if that go wide deck is white green or white red. White red is definitely cycling, but there is go wide potential here. And of course, this is go wide human specifically. If you can get a whole lot of value out of this, this might go up to like a C+, but I think this is probably just going to stick around a C regardless of deck. Up next is Sanctuary Lockdown. Sanctuary Lockdown is 2 and a white for an enchantment, and uncommon humans you control get +1/+1. Pay 2, tap 2 untapped humans you control, tap target creature an opponent controls. So I'm not super sold on this. Humans you control get +1/+1 is an okay effect, but I don't really know if the human deck is going to be all that good. None of the payoffs exactly excite me, and you're going to be dealing with decks that are very not human and much bigger and much tougher to deal with and much more mutatey. As a quick check, white is the most human color with 9 humans in it. There are 5 black humans, blue, red, and green each have 2 humans, and there are some multicolored humans kicking around, but not too many, especially not below the rare rarity. So I just don't know about the sort of all humans deck. We'll see if it comes together, and if it does, 3 mana to Anthem, a significant chunk of your team might be okay, but it's going to really depend on if that deck comes together and if that deck is good. Paying 2 to tap 2 untapped humans you control to tap another creature seems very, 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 very expensive. That is so much, but of course I can see the best case scenario where you have 8 humans on the board, you have 8 mana. We're getting into really big board state here, but you have 8 mana, you have 8 humans, you tap all 8 mana, all 8 humans, you tap 4 of their creatures, and then on your turn hopefully they have no defenses and your 8 humans attack and they all have +1/+1. That, I guess, is best case scenario. I don't know how often that's going to come up. If you're just tapping one singular creature and it's costing you 2 creatures to tap, it feels like a lot. So I'm out on Sanctuary Lockdown. I'll keep an eye on it. I'll keep an eye on that humans deck, but I don't see it coming together just yet. So I'm going to start at a D+ on Sanctuary Lockdown. Up next is Survice Sabertooth. Survice Sabertooth is 1 and a white for a creature cat at common. It's a 3/1 with flavor text. That's it. I love 3/1s for 2 in white. That's my favorite stats. Most of you know that if you've been watching me for a while. If this set can support aggro, which I actually kind of think it can, and we're going to actually talk about a card in just a little bit that I think really shows just how aggressive this format can be, then this will be very good. It'll get in for damage, especially if your opponent's trying to do some later game shenanigans. If your opponent's mutating on one creature as opposed to going wide and you kill it, this 3/1 will get in for even more damage. Seems like it's got a home in the format. I think it's still a C. I will play it more often than I should. Snare Tactician is up next. Snare Tactician is 2 and a white for a creature human soldier at common. It's a 2/3. Whenever you cycle a card, tap target creature an opponent controls. This is another good payoff for the cycling deck, the red-white cycling deck. Getting 2 at the end of your opponent's turn, cycle a card, tap one of their creatures, making them hopefully defenseless or more defenseless than they were prior for your next turn is just going to be really good. I think Snare Tactician will be one of the best common payoffs for the cycling deck, and I'd be pretty happy to have them in that deck. If you are not cycling very much, it's a very filler card. It's like a D+, C-, but if you are in that cycling deck, I think it jumps all the way up to a strong C+. Up next is Solid Footing. Solid Footing is a single white mana for an enchantment aura at common. It's got flash, enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1. As long as enchanted creature has vigilance, it assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. I mean, I guess I don't know why this card exists. It's very weird. So it's a +1/+1 counter essentially, but it's an aura, which means it can be removed if that matters. It doesn't give vigilance, so the bottom text doesn't do anything naturally. You'll have to give it to something that already has vigilance or get a vigilance counter onto it, and then if you do, then it gets to butt fight. And, creatures that have higher toughness are typically better on vigilance because they can attack if possible for their damage, but then block really, really well. So I don't know. Solid Footing just seems like a really weird card. It seems like a card that will occasionally be played and it will occasionally do some work, but I'm not going to go in any way out of my way to actually play this card. So I'm going to keep it at a C-. It's just not. It's not. Up next is Splendor Mer. Splendor Mer is 2 and a white for a creature Elk Unicorn at uncommon. It's a 3/3 with lifelink, cycling for 1 and a white. When you cycle Splendor Mer, put a lifelink counter on target creature you control. This is a cycle as well. Creatures who you can cast who have a mechanic, or you can cycle to give their mechanic to somebody else. I think the ideal here is that I am always playing this card because a 3/3 for 3 with lifelink just blows the vanilla test out of the water. It's a relevant mechanic and potentially relevant stats for mutating. And if I, find myself in a situation where I just really don't need it or want it, I can cycle it away, draw a card, and give something else lifelink. Seems very solid. I don't think we'll go up to a B- for this, but I think it is an extremely strong C+. Up next is Spontaneous Flight. Spontaneous Flight is 2 and a white for an instant at common. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Put a flying counter on it. This definitely has a bit more play than it would suggest at first, because permanent flying isn't something to sneeze at all. You should try to end the game with this right away by giving something big flying, but if you don't, you still have that extreme threat flying in future turns in most games. Still around the sea level, but especially at common, this is just going to blow some games out of the water. This is going to be one of those cards that you just have to respect that they have a C for spontaneous flight. Up next is Stormwild Kaprador. Stormwild Kaprador is 2 and a white for a creature bird goat at uncommon. It's a 1/3 flyer. If non-combat damage would be dealt to Stormwind Kaprador, prevent that damage. Put a +1/+1 counter on Stormwild Kaprador for each 1 damage prevented this way. It's a 1/3 flyer for 3, which have never been stats that I really enjoyed, and the ability is extremely narrow. I'm sure someone out there will try to do some sort of cute combo where they burn it themselves and make it bigger and burn it themselves and make it bigger. It still can just die to removal, though. And remember, you have to treat your opponent as an intelligent human being. Yes, if they attempted to lightning bolt this, it would grow, but they just will not do that in the first place. So ultimately, to me, this actually just feels super, super, super filler. I just don't see how it's going to grow. I don't see it as that good of a mutate platform. I just don't see wanting to play this card. I think I've got it at like a C-. I don't know. Maybe the whole ping it to make it grow thing is actually going to be super viable, but I doubt it. C- for Stormwind Kaprador. Up next is Swallow Hole. Swallow Hole is a single white mana for a sorcery at uncommon. As an additional cost to cast this spell, tap an untapped creature you control. Exile target tapped creature. Put a +1/+1 counter on the creature tapped to pay this spell's additional cost. So this is not as good as you think. We've seen this effect before, and it's almost always at sorcery speed, and people always have to be talked down that it's just not that good. There are tappers in this format, so perhaps you can use that to get around it, and that's not a bad idea, but we're starting to get into multiple cards to make this card work. In general, you're going to have to be hit by that scary thing that you want to kill in order for it to be tapped on your turn, because you have to cast it at sorcery speed. That's typically where the big problem for this type of card comes in. Now, you also have to have an untapped creature that you're willing to tap at sorcery speed, meaning you are almost definitely not going to get to attack with this unless it's got vigilance and you're attacking and then tapping it down with this. So I don't know, this card seems fine as a one of, but there's just going to be so many situations where it doesn't get to be cast. I'm just wary of these cards. I've always been wary of these cards. It's always been correct to be wary of these cards. I think the first one might be okay, but do not play a whole bunch of these thinking that you got super lucky on all the removal. I'm going to go with a C+ on Swallow Hole. Up next is Valiant Rescuer. Valiant Rescuer is 1 and a white for a creature human soldier at uncommon. It's a 3/1. Whenever you cycle another card for the first time each turn, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token, cycling for 2 generic mana. So this is an uncommon cycling payoff, which you think would be better. I don't think this is actually that much better, or even better than the Snare Tactician that taps things when you cycle. Getting a random 1/1 just doesn't seem that super exciting to me. Perhaps the cycling deck is also the go wide deck. You get this, you make a whole bunch of 1/1s, and then you use your coordinated charge to give them all +2/+1. I don't know. Getting +1s or getting 1/1s are fine. They're going to chump block probably. Who knows if they'll be relevant. I think it's an okay payoff. You're definitely not going to say no to it in your cycling deck. I just don't think that I'm saying, oh, this got passed to me, I definitely need to get into that deck. So I think this is just like a strong C+, but just a C+. Up next is Vole Paquete. Vole Paquete is 3 and a white for a creature foxbird at common. It's a 2/3 with flying. Whenever this creature mutates, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Mutate for 2 and a white. This card, I think, suggests that this format could actually have some speed to it. You have to respect that if you play a 1 or a 2 drop, on turn 3, you can mutate this out for 3 mana, and you get a hasty 3/4 flyer, potentially with other rules text as well, depending on what you put this on. That's insanely fast. That's going to make some games end very, very, very rapidly. This card terrifies me, and it's at common. This is going to be one of the top 3 best white commons for sure. I almost wonder if it might give Pacifism a run. I don't think it will. I think this will be number 2, but this seems like one of the best white commons we have. It seems crazy. I think it's like the strongest C+, and I might even put it into B- range. Even if you fail to curve out, a 2/3 flyer for 4 that can potentially grow is not that bad, and you don't have to play this for 4 mana. You can play a 3-drop on turn 3, on turn 4, jam it on that 3-drop, and you potentially have an even bigger thing. If it was a 3/3 for 3, now you have a 4/4 flyer for 3. Vole Paquete seems extremely good, and I think it is one of the best white commons in the set for sure. Our final white card for today is Will of the All Hunter. Will of the All Hunter is 1 and a white for an instant at uncommon. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If it's blocking, instead put 2 +1/+1 counters on it, cycling for 2 generic mana. It's a cute combat trick. It's probably good enough to always main deck it. Obviously, the fail case is using this on attacks. On defense, it's very nice, but only planning to play it on defense is a card that you just shouldn't really play. I do not ever want to play defensive combat tricks, but having that versatility is pretty nice. Getting to cycle it, if it's also completely irrelevant, is nice. This just seems like a totally fine C, maybe even a strong C, but I don't think we're going to go up to C+ on this. I think you play it. I think you don't actively try to cut it, but you also shouldn't feel bad if you don't have a spot for it. So a strong C for Will of the All Hunter. So that's going to wrap it up for white. A bit of a longer video because we had to talk about Mutate and we had to talk about this format and all of the weirdness that is with it. Yeah, I have no clue about this format. It kind of terrifies me. I think this is going to be the set review that I'm the wrongest about, or if not the most wrong, then at least the most inaccurate, I guess, because it just feels like so many of the cards actively range from Ds to Bs. They depend on what your deck is. They depend on if you're curving out or not. Some of them depend on just if you're lucky or not. And so, yeah, this format's going to feel very, very strange to me. I think it's going to feel extremely high variance, which are things that are not adding up to be a format that I like, which is weird because I've never felt hesitant about a draft format. I've hated draft formats after the fact, but every single set review, I've been optimistic and excited for a new set. This one, I am hesitant about. Could be really fun, could be horrible. We'll find out very, very shortly. Let me know what you're thinking about Ikoria. Let me know what cards you're excited about in white, what cards you agree with, disagree with, etc. I for sure want to be opening those Broodmoths as much as possible because it looks like you can't lose if you play that card and it sticks around for a few turns. Very, very good cards here. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. As always, if you do have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can find me over on Twitter, Twitch, and Facebook. You can find me at patreon.com/manaleek if you want to help out that way. Get access to the Patreon Discord, where we just added a beer channel to talk about and post pictures of beer, and there's all kinds of other stuff as well. You can go to inkedgaming.com/themanaleek if you want to buy something from there, and that will help the channel out that way by letting them know that I sent you. And of course, the easiest way to help out is like, share, and subscribe. If you do have any questions, comments, or suggestions, though, let me know. Otherwise, see y'all next time.